from the city of St. Louis, you're listening to the Don't Push Pause podcast with your hosts, Justin Johnson and Lindsay Reber.
Welcome back, or welcome again to the podcast. So this is our bonus episode. We promised we'd do an extra episode in October because we love this month so much. We love Halloween.
Why not?
And we're doing all scary movies for the month of October. And for the bonus episode, we're going to go stray a little bit from format, just a tiny bit. But we also decided we'd stick with a classic horror film, and so we chose Wes Craven's original 1984 film, A Nightmare on Elm Street.
So good. Still holds up. Still totally terrifying to me.
Yeah, I saw this in the theater actually like a year ago. I went to Edwardsville, Illinois, and they were showing it. On
in the outdoor?
No,
like
it was inside. It was like
Okay.
a Tuesday night. But they were doing all scary movies every Tuesday. And
yeah, I remember.
it was pretty packed theater, and it's still, I mean, there was a lot of people, young people in there, and I think the movie still holds up. It's pretty effective to give the scares.
That's got to really say something too when a movie from over 30 years ago can still pack a theater. I mean, granted, it's probably like 1 or 3 showings, but still pack a theater.
Yeah, I mean, there were definitely parents there with their kids, like introducing them to the next generation. So we're going to talk about Nightmare on Elm Street. Breaking a little bit from format, we figured since this was a bonus episode, we are each going to talk about one of our scariest nightmares we've had in our lives.
And then we're going to go into our picks of the week. This time I did The People Under the Stairs.
And I did Serpent and the Rainbow.
Both Wes Craven movies.
So we'll do our picks of the week. We'll do our nightmare segment, and then we'll close out, as always, with our Murray moment.
We got a lot of ground to cover in this episode.
Yeah. So Nightmare on Elm Street, I think it's there's so many Nightmare on Elm Streets that have been made, and we'll talk about the franchise a little bit. But I just think it's to me, it's up there. It as a standalone film. It's without anything else. It's a good story. It's inventive and still scary. It has like a great villain.
I would always go back to the reason this movie a lot of people passed on this movie initially, but what makes it so terrifying is that, it's a dream. Freddy attacks in dreams, so in theory, this is someone that is unkillable. And it's not unkillable like you shoot him 1,000 times with a gun or an arrow or stab him and he still keeps coming back. It's like you really can't kill him because he kind of doesn't exist. So if anything, it's something that's always going to be timeless because we all have dreams and nightmares, and it's not just the boogeyman in the dark. It's someone that attacks you at your most vulnerable when you're asleep.
Yeah, and I do like the idea that certainly there's many films that have come after this one that have there's dream sequences that have been done into the dirt. But there is something effective and interesting about a guy who's just not going around stabbing people. He's actually can get into your dreams and get into your psyche, and I think that's what makes. I think in any of these sort of slasher film, and don't get me wrong, I can get down with all the 80s slasher stuff.
Yeah.
But this one I do like because the kills can be creative. It's I think you said it perfect. It's like more imaginative.
Yeah.
In its way to like kill the body count.
Yeah. Like Nightmare on Elm Street kind of came after like the slasher genre had already started and it was beginning to kind of phase out, and no one was really the enthusiasm for people going to see slasher movies really just had kind of fizzled out. And so this was almost a reinvention of the genre. And although I know that this fits into the slasher genre, I don't really, my brain doesn't immediately go there with putting it in that category.
Well, we'll go into that a little bit more. We'll talk about that. We'll talk about
Wes Craven.
We'll talk about Wes Craven. We'll talk about the franchise in and of itself. we'll kind of talk a little bit, like you said, about the imaginativeness, his placement in horror.
Where Freddy came from, too.
Maybe a little talk about Robert Englund. Yeah, like some of the origins of how this movie came together. Mm-hmm. But yeah, we'll get started. Before we get moving here, what is Nightmare on Elm Street about, Lindsay?
All right.
You have a summary for us.
Yeah. So Nightmare on Elm Street follows a core group of 4 kids, 4 friends, who are all individually terrorized by this boogeyman in their dreams, and early on they start to realize that they're being terrorized by the same person. One by one, they get knocked off, and we follow Nancy, the only remaining one of them, who is the one that ends up battling Freddy, I would say, over everybody else. And one of the most brilliant plot twists, I think, of a movie is a good 3/4 of the way through. We find out a little backstory that kind of turns this movie on its end and really changes it from being a straightforward horror movie to something kind of deeper, with a deeper plot. I didn't even say Freddy Krueger in any of that, did I?
No.
But we find out who Freddy Krueger is.
Well, we'll go into a clip of Nancy talking about Freddy Krueger to her mom. So we'll get your Fred Krueger in there for you.
All right.
So, did you ask Daddy to have the hat examined?
I threw that filthy thing away. I don't know where you really found it or what you're trying to prove.
What I learned in the dream clinic, that's what I'm trying to prove, Mother. Rod didn't kill Tina. And he didn't hang himself.
It's this guy. He's after us in our dreams. But that's just not reality, Nancy.
It's real, Mama. Feel it.
Give me that damn thing.
It even has his name written in it. Fred Krueger, Mom. Fred Krueger. Do you know who that is, Mother? Because if you do, you better tell me, because he's after me now.
Nancy, trust your mother for once, please. You'll feel better when you get some sleep.
Feel better? You call this feeling better?
So we'll talk about, we'll get into Wes Craven later, but Wes Craven's idea, the origin of this spark for Nightmare on Elm Street, the idea for this film.
Yeah.
You were telling me over the phone you had read about where.
I was really fascinated by this. That so the original idea for someone attacking you in your dreams came from this string of articles that Wes Craven had read about people that were having these nightmares where they were being attacked in their dreams and they didn't want to go to sleep. And you know what's more terrifying than not being able to sleep because you're afraid you're going to die? We all have to sleep. It's how are you supposed to get around that? And one story in particular, if I remember correctly, it was a group of people from Southeast Asia, I think is what Wes Craven said. I wasn't able to track down the articles. I'm sure they exist. Anyway, this one guy that he was complaining about being attacked in his dreams and not wanting to go to sleep, and it had been going on for a while. And one particular night, he had been prescribed sleeping pills, and his family thought that he had been taking them this whole time. And this one night he was just exhausted, and he finally crashed and finally fell asleep, and his family put him to bed, and everyone else went to bed. And then shortly later, they were awakened by him screaming, pawing, just like the blood-curdling screaming, and ran into his room, and with that it was like he just instantly died. After he passed away, it was found that he had been, palming all of these sleeping pills, and he hadn't been taking any of them, and he had this secret coffee pot stashed away like we see actually in Nightmare on Elm Street, and that he had been that afraid to not go to sleep, that it had really gone to this length and it had killed him. I think that there's a condition behind this. I mean, however you try to rationalize it, there was something that was going on here. So the dream aspect of it, that's where Wes came up with it. And then the idea of Freddy Krueger, I think, is really terrifying, actually. So when Wes was a kid, he said that there was this moment in the middle of the night. He happened to look out his window and saw this man passing. And he said it was like the guy knew that he saw him. And he just looked straight up at him. And like they made eye contact for a second. And Wes said it scared the crap out of him. And he backed away. And he waited. And he waited. And he looked again out the window. And the guy was still looking up at him. And so he was like freaked out as a little kid. And very short little while later, Wes said that he heard the front door like jiggle, like the handle jiggle, like this guy had walked around to the side of the house and had tried to get in. And I think I've heard him tell this a few different ways, where it seems like it ends there, or he actually like did get in for a second and then was chased off. Either way, he described this situation as like this guy knew that he freaked out this kid and he kind of got off on it. And no matter what it was, this guy was looking to terrify him. And he was also wearing the hat that Wes makes Freddy Krueger wear. So like this guy was totally modeled, or Freddy Krueger was totally modeled after this guy.
I always like to hear the genesis of like how a movie comes together. And it's interesting that he took partially from his own life and partially from someone else's real life. Yeah.
Both real life situations just like put together into this. Yeah, it's a nightmare.
Interesting too, because they don't really, this is a movie that doesn't rely on based on true events kind of situation.
No.
Could have easily put that in front of the movie, but I like that Wes Craven took like just the stem of these things and then put his spin on it.
Expounded on it from there.
To me, and that's the thing, it's like I don't like to, it's one thing when we do these discussions, it's like I don't like to compare and contrast, but since we're going to talk about this movie as a franchise, it's hard not to compare it to other horror franchises that are as large, like Halloween or Friday the 13th.
Yeah.
But to me, as a first film, I think this movie plays so well. It does, as it slowly went on and on, it became this sort of juggernaut and jumped the shark or whatever. But this first script is really smart. It's very creative. I think that it could have gotten cheesy with like the dream stuff, like, and I think that they really play on this reality of where we're at in the film versus like where we're at in dreams. But to me, the thing that makes the movie terrifying, where I feel like I'm pulled into this universe of where these kids live on Elm Street, is when Nancy goes to the dream clinic. Or like, is it a dream clinic? It's like where there's and these things do exist. I actually have a friend who worked at one of these clinics where they help people with like sleep apnea and sleep disorders, and they actually like record them sleeping.
Yeah.
And
just fascinating.
But to me, that was always the part that made me scared in this movie, because we trust our parents to help us, and the parents are like, well, we can't help you, so we're going to take you to the specialist. And then the specialist is trying to figure something out, but then she pulls the hat out of the dream, and it's like, okay.
Yeah, she's having a nightmare at the dream clinic and wakes up.
And then finally that what I like about this script and why I think it's so smart is that is the device that uses her pulling the hat out of her dream to force the parents' hand to say, like, we created this monster because we, and then we get the backstory of Freddy.
The original script, we should say, just to clear the air here, the original script, Freddy Krueger was a child molester and child murderer, but when this movie came out, or when this movie was being made, there was a whole string of articles across California that were about kids getting molested, and it was kind of like a media thing. And so when the movie was being made, they're like, you know what? We're actually going to extract that out of this movie and just make him a straight up child killer. And which
I think a wise omission.
Such a good idea to take that out, because it changes the whole tone if you add molesting kids into this. It's just not necessary when you're making a slasher movie. I think when you add that in there, there's a whole other like guttural like okay, slasher movies are gross and violent anyway. Like, we don't need to add that aspect in there. That's just like, okay, I don't even know why I want to watch this movie about a pedophile, you know? But so the plot twist is that he is a child killer. The parents of the town are like, they finally have enough and, have had enough of this, have had enough of him killing their children. I don't know. And they burn his house down, set him on fire. I think they burn his house down. And that is why we have Freddy, who is this melted pizza face of a guy that is the monster that he is and haunts the dreams of these kids. Because in essence, he's dead. Yeah. But he haunts the dreams of all the kids of this town because of the parents.
And I'm really into and I probably mentioned this before on the podcast, but I'm always a fan of movies that are centered on teens, but there's a well balance between the adults and the teens. Yeah. It's not necessarily just strictly this teens world and the adults are throwaway characters and vice versa. And I think that this is a movie where the adult characters are pretty strong, like John Saxon, who plays Nancy's dad, who has a pretty pivotal role in this, and then like her mom, who's just clearly never gotten
God, I over love this. The mom.
But I think that they're so intertwined, and that, like you said, when we get this plot twist here, where we find out that they were heavily involved, and they're the reason why the children are being punished because of the parents' actions. Yeah. I just like that, and to me it does help it break away from the mold of these other slasher films where it's just like teens getting killed, one after another.
It makes it a deeper story, and I think once you find out that the parents are being punished for murdering this child killer, your mind all of a sudden like starts to like backtrack, and you think about Nancy's mom and her dad being like sharing these glances, and you're like, oh, that's what that was. So I think it adds this whole element that you just aren't expecting, especially in a slasher movie, for it to go a little deeper. And I mean, Wes Craven did that with Scream too. So like he's no stranger to making the movies that he makes are a little bit deeper than your just straightforward like Pieces. Not that Pieces is whatever, but you know. Like,
but you're not always one step ahead of the characters. There's a little mystery. Well, let's go to another clip from Nightmare on Elm Street, and then we'll come back. We'll talk about Heather Langenkamp. We'll talk about Robert Englund, and we'll talk about Mr. Wes Craven.
Glenn, don't fall asleep. Brilliant. What if Ben tries to call?
So Heather Langenkamp, who plays Nancy, which is the central character of the whole film, really brings everything together. I saw an interview that Wes Craven said he was looking for basically like the antithesis of what the lead female character had been at that time in horror movies. Essentially an anti-Scream queen, which is why I think you never hear Heather Langenkamp's name mentioned when you see the list of Scream queens. And not that I don't love the Scream queen list of people. I love Jamie Lee Curtis.
Yeah, is Jamie Lee Curtis? I mean, I guess
I think she's like the queen of. Yeah, she's like the queen
except for her mom,
queen. Right?
Janet Leigh of Psycho.
But I do like the change of pace, the change of form that the character of Nancy brings, and I do think that Heather Langenkamp brings that out, not just in her acting, but also just in the way, just generally in the way she looks more like a young next door neighbor.
Yeah.
She looks more her age that she's supposed to be in the film, not like a 23-year-old playing like an 18-year-old or 17-year-old.
Yeah. I feel one thing that makes her work so well in this is that she is very real, and even though she's in her early 20s, I believe when she did this role, I don't know whether it's her performance or how they make her look, but she definitely can pass for a high school teen.
Yeah, totally.
There's something about Nancy, and maybe it is because she's not a Scream queen, and she's not necessarily running from Freddy. If anything, I look at Nancy as someone that is trying to figure it out the whole time. She's not, I mean, yes, she's afraid because she doesn't understand what's going on, but I don't ever get the sense that Nancy is running away from it. She's always wanting to face it. And if anything, I feel like her character, what we see in where does she come back? In Nightmare 3 and Dream Warriors, and then in New Nightmare, but I mean, I guess more in Nightmare 3. She's always a strong character.
Yeah.
And in this, she's always facing Freddy, and there's this weird, I don't want to say sexual tension between she and Freddy, but there's this very, I don't want to say sexual tension, but you did say I did. Okay. I said it twice actually. But there's this sense of like Freddy's met his match in a way, because Nancy's she's never backing down no matter what. And she is the last woman standing in all of this too.
I'm a fan of the way she takes this character's arc, and that essentially when she realizes what Freddy is, that's usually where a movie kind of fumbles around, a horror movie where they're like figuring something out. And like, I got to put a stop to it. And there's certainly a little bit of that in Nightmare on Elm Street, I think, but I think she does an admirable job. A little bit,
but she's like confronting her mom about this, and she's confronting everyone about.
I think she does an admirable job of really propelling that.
Yeah, she's like, "Who is Freddy? I'm not going to sleep. I'm drinking coffee every night of my life. I'm not going to give into this because I'm terrified. But like, no, I'm figuring this out."
And the line that always makes me laugh is, because they kind of put a little makeup under her eyes to make her look like she hasn't slept in like 2 or 3 days.
Sure.
And she like looks in the mirror and she's like, "Oh my God, I look 20 years old." And I just, every time that line, because she says it with such like conviction, like
I look
disgust.
20 years old.
She says it with such disgust.
As if it's so old. There's a number of lines in this movie that make me laugh, and I there is a little bit of humor in Nightmare on Elm Street, and I don't know if it's necessarily intended. Maybe it's because of the datedness or the acting or whatever, but there's a few lines of Nancy's that like, while I never look at that character and like think of the actress, I like think of like Nancy, like that's just her.
What's a line?
The line after her friend Tina, the first person who's killed by Freddy, and Nancy, Heather Langenkamp's taken in to the station for questioning, and her mom says something, I can't remember exactly the thing, but like, "Are you sure you know what you're talking about?" And she's like, "How do you think I'm not taking your death seriously?" Like that line.
So hysterical.
It's the way, she's hysterical. She is upset, and it's like, yes, you know what? In that situation, if my best friend had just been murdered, I probably would be like hysterical too. I think it's just the way that it's delivered that I think that there are these like little gems in this movie that make it that aren't necessarily intended humor, but just make it just add a little twinge in there that make it a little bit more entertaining on a level that it wasn't intended, but doesn't cheapen it by any means.
Right. I agree. And we also want to talk about Robert Englund a little bit here, just a tiny bit.
Freddy
the man
himself.
who brought Freddy to life. I think it is important to address the fact that he brought the character to life.
Yeah.
And I think even in the documentary, the Never Sleep Again,
which is an awesome 4-hour documentary.
If you're gonna
go through it, a
4-hour documentary on the entire franchise.
It's great though.
You'll enjoy it. Yeah. But in the documentary they state that in Nightmare on Elm Street Part 2,
oh my God,
they didn't want to pay Robert Englund more money. And, naturally, a sequel starts up, you're expected to get more money. It's just like a natural way of things. The first one was a hit. No one got paid. They did all this work. Now the sequels where all these people who didn't get paid the first time around make money. And they were just like, oh, we'll just hire some other clown to play Freddy Krueger.
He's in a mask. What is it?
Immediately realized that they were wrong and that they needed Robert Englund. And I think that he continuously, built on the character of Freddy throughout the entire franchise. And it was a huge franchise. I mean, we're talking 7-8 movies, television series, music videos, commercials, all kinds of wacky stuff. Yeah.
Robert Englund really took this character from, I feel like the first Freddy is terrifying. And when we move on, even like the second Freddy's Revenge, he's still scary, and we start to see a little bit more humor. And then like kind of the rest of it until we get to New Nightmare, there's a lot of humor involved. That's not to say that he's not terrifying. He's still very scary. But I think with each movie, whether like however you feel about each movie as it progresses, his progression of Freddy is almost like Robert Englund is Freddy, and I can't imagine someone else stepping in, and it's like you said before, like they had a stunt guy, because like why do they need an actor? Like whatever, we just have a stunt guy step in here and do this, and they were like, holy crap, this is terrible, we can't have that. And it is because, I mean, from Robert Englund mentioned something like, when he put on like the Freddy glove, like it was so heavy it made his shoulder drop. And so you notice all throughout the first one that like one shoulder hangs lower than the other one, which maybe that wouldn't happen in another actor.
Right.
And there are all these little things that made him so creepy and made it work in the first one so well. And if you're going to change that, it's just not, it's not going to be the same thing.
Yeah. And I think too, also just is in a general sense in the pop culture mainstream of the 80s, it was the first time that we had like a horror genre superstar since like the 60s of like
monster
Vincent
movies
Price or Peter Cushing or, I mean, I remember having like photos, posters up on my wall as a kid of like Robert Englund out of makeup, but with the Freddy glove on. Like, I mean, I knew his face. I knew his name.
Yeah.
I think like at that point, like he was really like a star that people knew his name. I mean, you associated, you wouldn't like the first one, standalone film, scary movie. But beyond that, like, I think like once the 80s were over, like you wouldn't associate Nightmare on Elm Street without the word Robert Englund, even more so than Wes Craven's name, I believe.
Yeah. I would definitely say that Robert Englund kind of like overshadowed Wes Craven in that sense. And this movie was, or this franchise was really saturated as far as marketing. Like, hell, I'm wearing a knockoff like Freddy shirt right now. I have a, Freddy, not decal, but like little figurine that hangs in my car. Like there was so much merchandising of this entire franchise. And, You're not going to get something like that no matter, I mean, you can do that with other movies, but you're not going to get something that really pulls people in and holds them and keeps them searching for it on eBay.
Yeah.
If you don't have this character, Freddy, that hooks you in.
Yeah, and I think there is something that Robert Englund does where we love to hate / love a villain.
Yeah.
You know, and to me, like some of the greatest battles fought between two characters, it's like if there's with a good villain, it's like Die Hard would not be the movie without Hans Gruber, you know. And I think like a movie like Nightmare on Elm Street, like you have Freddy Krueger.
I would say the same
really
thing
comes
for
to life, you know,
for like Jack Nicholson's Joker.
Yeah,
in the original Batman,
an actor takes the villain beyond what you could even imagine, and you almost you come to love the villain.
Yeah, because
they have so much character and so much charm and pizzazz. And I think that's throughout the Nightmare franchise, Robert Englund really played to that.
You still find Freddy costumes in like Halloween stores now, and it's 30 years later. Like the mark that Robert Englund made and that Wes Craven made with this character, it's just it's really something I would challenge even more than Michael Myers or Jason Voorhees.
Yeah, I think we both have said to ourselves, not on the podcast, that amongst the horror franchises, this is our favorite.
Yeah,
and
I just think it's deeper. No matter if you think the sequels suck or whatever.
And I'm a fan of multiple.
Yeah, me too.
Horror franchises, but if I'm going for the long ride, and I was to, why I would ever do this, but if you had to sit me down and say you pick one franchise and you've got to watch it all day long, hands down, I would always go for Nightmare on Elm Street.
Easily. You know why? Because they're all different, and they're all like, you're not, like I said before, you're not waiting for the kill. You're not waiting for like, what's the next like weird death sequence going to be? And yes, weird death sequences happen in these, but each movie, whether you don't like the plot or not, they're all different.
Right, and I feel like this was a franchise that you could go beyond Elm Street, and still have a captivating story, and still have interesting characters. Whereas like other franchises, once you leave that universe, and I'll use Friday 13th for an example.
You gotta stay at the camp.
Once you leave the camp.
Sleepaway Camp, same thing.
You start. That was like so built into that was such a character that you take away. But Elm Street, even though it was this universe in the house, in the nursery rhyme, you have all these things. Those were able to move into these other locations, these other universes outside of the world of Elm Street, and still function as like an entertaining movie.
You know, it's a kind of fun fact is that Elm Street is never uttered in the film at all.
Really?
Yeah.
I didn't know that.
The reason that was included in the title was because there is an Elm Street basically in every city or town, making it even more like this could happen to anybody.
Here's a fun fact.
What?
It's a personal fun fact. I don't know how fun it is actually. But so this is like my third job.
Okay.
I've got a summer job as a landscaper.
Okay.
And I knew nothing about landscaping, but this guy's like, you're 17.
Sure.
If you work 10 hours a day, we'll train you, whatever.
Yeah.
You can borrow our tools. But the guy who was training me lived on Elm Street, and I'm not making this up.
Yeah.
His name was Robert Krueger.
Come on. No way.
Yeah, and
did he know that? Did he know how weird that was?
I never brought it up because he was like a real serious guy.
Yeah, why would you bring that up?
But one day I'm working with all the people who are landscaping, and I'm like, so anybody here a fan of Nightmare on Elm Street? And they're like, yeah, it's okay. I'm like, does it seem strange? Like, just I kind of have to just bring it up into discussion.
Not to be awkward or anything, guys, but
his name is Robert Krueger, and he lives off of Elm Street. And they're just like, oh my God, I never noticed that, Anyway, it was the only thing I could think about. Like the entire time he was training me. Like, we went to go pick up the tools at his house off of Elm Street, you know, and I'm just like, weird. Like, I just want to ask him, like, have you seen the Freddy movies?
How do you feel about that, bro?
Your name was Robert Krueger, and you, like, was it a choice to live off of Elm Street? Like, you bought this house, and you're like, will this be a weird thing, like, that'll be, like, a part of my life? But he probably never even saw an Elm Street movie.
Maybe.
Yeah. But anyway, that aside...
I love that. It's really
let's
funny,
talk
Justin.
That aside, let's quickly talk about this franchise.
Yeah.
You know, it's had its share of hit and misses. Certain ones I love. What
are your favorites?
My favorites are, of course, the original.
Yeah. We're talking sequels here.
I'm a big fan of Dream Warriors.
Okay.
I have a huge nostalgic love for Part 4.
Oh, yeah. Okay.
And I still think Part 4 works really well. I like it's to me, it's one of the more fastest moving, entertaining of the franchise. And then I saw Part 5, 6, and 7 in their theatrical release.
Okay.
And I'm still not a fan of 5. I wasn't a fan of 5 when it came out.
Dreamchild, yeah?
Dreamchild.
Yeah.
Part 6.
Freddy's Dead. Which is supposed to be the end-all, last Freddy.
But New Nightmare, I'm pretty much Part 1, Part 3, and Part 7. And coincidentally, all the ones that Wes Craven had a hand in the script. Yeah. To me, those are the ones that are most imaginative and creative. And I think we're more truer to the Freddy Krueger that we know.
Part 7, New Nightmare is very closely behind the original. And upon this, rewatching these also made me look at the Scream franchise too. And New Nightmare almost seemed like where Scream 3 came from, where it was like making it into a movie and making it into reality. But I think New Nightmare was really brilliant in that way, because it was one of the first to do that, though, was to take so New Nightmare is basically the characters, the actors that play these characters are playing themselves. Yeah. And they're existing in the movie as themselves, and then Freddy starts to interact with them as the actors. And I think that it was just a great reinvention of the franchise. And I mean, I think it should have ended there if we didn't really need Freddy versus Jason, but whatever.
You got to make money.
Exactly. And completely, I think, I might be wrong about this, but I feel like Freddy versus Jason was the one that made the most money.
Yeah, I think it made like more money than like every
ridiculous
Nightmare movie put together.
I feel like
but when people are waiting like 15 years for something, I
feel like that's the only one I actually thought in it, or saw in its original theatrical release. I will say, I don't want to take this opportunity to miss this, but Freddy's Revenge, the second Freddy, was always destined to make money, because the first one did. No matter if it was good or bad, people were going to go see that sequel. I love Freddy's Revenge, Freddy 2, but not because it's an amazing movie, but because it is the gayest horror movie you will ever see. And that's saying a lot. I mean, like, let's put this out there. The first like real gay horror movie was a movie called Hellbent, which is great. It's not amazing, it's great. But Freddy's Revenge was something that was and this wasn't known at the time, but like the lead actor, and it was the only Freddy that featured a lead hero as a male. All of the rest of them have been female. And the actor was gay. I'm gonna get this wrong. Not the set designer. Somebody else I think it might have been the set designer. Someone that was constructing the background was also gay. The writer, I'm not sure if he was or not, but he was aware of what he was putting out into the world, that there was this kind of like subversive maybe gay subtext he was putting out there. And if you watch the movie, even without knowing that, especially in the year that we're in now, there's no way you can watch it and go, huh, what's they're straight up in a gay club scene. There's like a towel whipping ass scene. There's singing on a bed with a hairbrush. There's so many things in this that make it amazingly gay, and it's not said. And so many people involved with the movie didn't realize it was happening until well after it was completed, and then everyone pretty much universally was like, "Yeah, it's pretty gay. We just didn't realize it at the time."
I haven't seen it in a while, and you have to rewatch it in that context.
Jesus, I think I saw it very early on in life, so I didn't even think about that, and then it was brought up to me that you didn't know that there was a gay Freddy, and I'm like, really? What? Okay, I got to go back and rewatch that, and holy moly, yeah. So I would go on record saying that Freddy 2, Freddy's Revenge, is maybe the first gay horror movie.
All right.
Yeah. So I love Freddy 2. I love Dream Warriors and New Nightmare. Those are my favorite sequels.
Real quick, let's just talk about Wes Craven, then we got to get to our picks of the week.
Yes. Yeah.
Wes Craven, creator, mastermind behind this whole Freddy business, Nightmare on Elm Street.
Whole
and
Freddy
this was
business.
This was like his fifth film, fifth feature film. I mean, this was definitely his breakout movie, but he was already no stranger to the genre of horror movies, and then continued on to be, I mean, really he didn't stray from the genre, which is, other than one movie, Music of the Heart, which was like one of the last few movies that he did. I definitely think that when you listen to interviews, he's just such a sophisticated, interesting, was a professor and kind of looks like a professor and kind of talks like a professor in interviews, and you just wouldn't suspect that this would be one of the top horror directors, and just would always stay within the genre. But I think that he understood fans of the genre. Like, I feel like he didn't do things ever as a cash grab. I felt like he was always trying to push the limits and always trying to create something for horror movie fans that was genuinely scary and not dumbed down.
Yeah. I think, if anything, I mean, he hadn't really, I remember an interview of him saying, like, horror really wasn't like his thing. And the movies he remembers growing up on were like all the Disney movies, which I do. I know that, and they're all kind of horrific in their own way too, but still enjoyable. But to have someone not come from that background or like loving that and then being thrust into this, and then their first movie being Last House on the Left, which was like early 70s, which is supremely, and there was also a remake of this movie too, but it's like supremely violent.
It's a brutal watch.
Yeah.
It's an unpleasant watch.
It is. And it's there's nothing that I feel like Wes Craven really has ever done as far as violence goes that's unnecessary. So where I think in the year that we're in now, I feel like sometimes we go for the ultra violence, and like that's what we feel like is going to really pull people in. And I feel like in the early 70s in particular, even with like I Spit on Your Grave, we have movies that were violent, but they were violent for a purpose, and it was to propel the story. And like Last House on the Left really sucks in a lot of violence ways. I Spit on Your Grave is a terrible watch, but it doesn't mean that it's a bad movie. It means that it's very unbearable, but it doesn't mean that it's a bad movie. Last House on the Left is great, and I can't believe that was his first movie out of the gate. And then moving into like The Hills Have Eyes, which was also remade. How many Wes Craven movies can we remake, a
lot of them.
I don't think Swamp Thing was remade, but it was made into a TV series and a sequel. Yeah. He did Swamp Thing, and then we went into A Nightmare on Elm Street. And then I think probably even more than Nightmare on Elm Street, what he's most known for is the Scream franchise.
Yeah, which came very late in his career.
Yeah. And I mean, think what you will of Scream 2 and 3, whatever. I'm always going to like that franchise, but Scream 4 was I'm really proud of the dude for that one.
Yeah.
Like going out on Scream 4.
Yeah, I listened to an interview with, when we were preparing for this, I listened to an interview of Wes Craven talking about the Scream franchise. And he said that it was interesting to him because he had done so many horror movies. And he, at that point in time, he had sort of, this is what I am, this is what I do.
Yeah.
You know, I mean, he was comfortable with that fact. And he was still making movies that he enjoyed. He wasn't like burnt out. But it was interesting. He said it was interesting because he had just made New Nightmare, and then the script to Scream came along, and that was the movie they did after New Nightmare. Yeah. And he said this in a very humble way, and I do believe him to be a humble director.
Totally.
I mean, he has the filmography and
he's like the most understated man.
But he said that, and he said the reason why Scream came out so well is I just dealt with this territory. Yeah. But you have a script that dealt with the kids who love these movies, not the boring behind-the-scenes making of the movie, which is something he didn't think of. So he said, I was at the top of my game. I had just come off of this material. So he was just like, you put a director at the top of his game, working with material that he knows so well, with an excellent script and great actors, you're going to get this great movie. Yeah. And certainly those are all the ingredients to make a great film. But it's still, I think, like... Scream, I thought was like one of the last horror movies that I saw in the theater and walked out just excited, just like, oh my, you know what I mean? And I get burnt out on horror movies every now and then. It's ebbs and flows, but I remember Scream being...
I remember seeing Scream, totally.
And I also remember... having not seen Scream for a while, and I think this was a couple years ago. I think you came over to watch this. We did. It was when Wes Craven passed away. I did like a little tribute night in my backyard, and I showed Scream. And my neighbors have kids, and I live in a town at home, and our backyards are it's a very tiny backyard with a fence, and we're right on top of each other. And most of the movies I had shown in my backyard were not family friendly by any means, but I took into consideration that there were neighbors and kids. And it was like, I hadn't seen Scream when I was like 10 or 15 minutes into Scream. I was like, man, I forgot how like hardcore this movie is. I mean, you forget because it is funny and fun and silly. Like, it's pretty brutal, and Wes Craven knows how to bring that. I mean, he does not shy away from a brutal scene.
He's always had the delicate balance of like making an incredibly interesting story and also mixing in a tiny bit of humor, but also like never relenting on like just how dark we can go. And like I said before with the violence, like he's never unnecessarily violent. It's always something that like it makes sense in the reality of the story that we're telling.
Well, let's so both of our picks of the week this week are both Wes Craven films, mid-career Wes Craven films. I picked Serpent and the Rainbow, which came out in 1988, and you picked
The People Under the Stairs.
People Under the Stairs.
Yeah.
And People Under the Stairs was written also, right, by Wes Craven.
It was written, by Wes Craven. Yeah. I also did watch The Serpent and the Rainbow finally.
Yeah.
Man, I can't believe it's taken me this long to watch that. It was so good.
I was kind of surprised you had never seen it.
Yeah. A friend of mine gave me a copy recently, and I just hadn't gotten the chance to watch it, and I finally did, and dang, man, that is a good movie. Yeah.
I probably hadn't seen it in 10 years, and then when I was like, what movie am I going to pick?
Yeah.
I remember... Well, I'll talk about it in a minute.
Honestly, the title of the movie is not necessarily gripping.
Yes, yeah.
But man, it is worth a viewing.
Yeah. Well, do you want me to just go right into Serpent and Rainbow?
I would love for you to talk about that.
Serpent and Rainbow, again, directed by Wes Craven. He did not write it. It was based off of a book and adapted. And it is basically like for its time, like a modern day realistic zombie movie. The movie centers on Bill Pullman, who plays a doctor who's hired by a pharmaceutical company to go to Haiti because the pharmaceutical company says that there was a man who was declared dead, and then 8 years later they had pictures of him that he was still living and kind of hanging out in this town. And they believe that the Haitians created some sort of anesthesia drug that causes the body to seem like it's dead, but then the body wakes up, revitalizes itself. So they see it as a way to make money, to have a new form of anesthesia, because at the time there was a 50% chance, or it was some like really crazy ratio of a chance that you could die on the table. So by giving anesthesia. So Bill Pullman goes and he immediately gets entangled in the culture, and it's like culture shock of Haitian culture and voodoo culture. And the movie does, I don't know a lot about voodoo culture, so I mean, I'm gonna say I feel like it's not exploitive, and it feels like it's being sensitive and not mocking or exploiting a religion, because most of the movie takes place in what is supposed to be Haiti in the 80s. Because of that, the movie doesn't feel dated, because you kind of get the sense that that village that they're at probably still looks like that. So Bill Pullman's character slowly starts to find out what's going on, like how they're performing this ritual where someone dies and then is brought back to life. But it turns out there's this secret police led by a very villainous police captain who basically is telling Bill Pullman, you need to leave Haiti, warns him. Bill Pullman doesn't listen, and then they take a nail and they hammer it into his scrotum, and you would think that would be enough to get him to get on the first plane out of Haiti, but it does not. He's at this point, he's determined to figure out what this is, and then eventually he goes through the process. They give him the powder, and he awakens in the coffin, but is saved by the man that they thought was that the pharmaceutical company had talked about in the beginning. And the movie is scary. It plays, I think that this is Wes Craven's most mature film. It does have a lot of imagery that you've seen in his other movies, especially with like hands grabbing a body. And because there's several sequences where it is a drug that they give them, you're getting the sense that this is what is it a hallucination? Is it real? But there is a real sense of dread in the movie. But again, like I say, I don't want to say that I know that is not being exploitive of this religion, of this culture. But seemingly when I watch the movie, it comes off being genuine and is trying to be a very mature horror film. Watching the movie, it made me wish that Wes Craven had the shot to do more films that had a more non-horror content, that dealt with characters, because this movie is a lot about the characters and their reactions with each other, and he does that really well, and he ramps up the tension really well. He's very good at like keeping things tense and keeping us engaged in a central character. And Bill Pullman, I don't know, Bill Pullman is just sort of always Bill Pullman. He's like the Matt Damon of the 80s, but I think he does an admirable job. I think the movie could have like been better at if they would have had someone more doctorly, maybe an older character. But you know what? It was he did an all right job, and I think that it's definitely worth seeing. I also would put it on that list of movies where if you're not necessarily a horror movie fan, I think that this is one that you could get down with. It's not super gory, but it does have a lot of nice atmosphere and really, a lot of great atmosphere actually. But yeah, I highly recommend it.
Yeah, I wouldn't say it's I think it's like 1979's like Zombie. I don't think it's like that straight up like zombie movie. It's very much more so of like a straightforward movie that happens to involve that. I don't think you're going to be put off by it being like a straight up horror movie or anything.
And even the word zombie comes up in the beginning of the movie.
They're like, if you're uncomfortable with the word zombie, you can use whatever you want.
They're like, whatever you want to call it. It's a drug. They do this. They do this little magical,
like a thing that happens, but whatever.
Yeah. So, not too shortly after this movie, Wes Craven wrote and directed the movie that you picked, which was People Under the Stairs. Can you tell me a little bit about this film?
So this 1991 horror movie was always a junior high slumber party favorite for me. And why is that? Well, it's totally out there. It's wacky. It's a little more disturbing than horrifying and even kind of funny. The comedy is somewhat similar to what exists in the other Wes Craven favorite, Scream. But there is a substantial amount of child abuse in the movie, which is not funny at all. But it is important in order to understand the plot. In The People Under the Stairs, we follow this kid nicknamed Fool, who's been roped into robbing his landlord's home because they are looking to evict Fool's just trying to get by family. Now this landlord's house is a maze-like castle of a home inhabited by Alice, a kidnapped, abused, frustrated teen girl played by AJ Langer. Some of you may know her as Rayanne Graff from My So-Called Life, that TV show, which I also loved. The house also houses a whole horde of imprisoned, pretty feral basement dwellers, all previously kidnapped, who didn't follow the see, speak, hear no evil rules of the house, as well as another kidnapped kid named Roach, who got away or got out of the basement and now lives in the walls, being the only companion to the abused Alice. And Roach actually ends up being super helpful in the plot and ends up helping our main hero Fool out big time. But what takes us into the completely over-the-top realm are the villainous landlords, a twisted brother-sister duo who are murderously out of their minds. They're gun-happy and maybe into some BDSM together. That's not really clear. But Everett McGill and Wendy Roby, who are fresh off their roles as Big Ed and Nadine Hurley from Twin Peaks, are the couple who pull off these characters with all too great of ease, almost as if like you couldn't even imagine anyone else playing these sickos. The People Under the Stairs works as a solid creep fest and is relatively fast-paced, actually. McGill and Roby are so wackadoo, which only adds to the comedy, as well as like Fool, who is a rock-solid lead for his age. And he's like death-defying, like he's defying situations that like shouldn't happen for a kid who's like 12. Surprisingly enough, this movie keeps me on edge, and Craven is kind of like a master at building tension. Now, where the Texas Chainsaw Massacre made us creeped out that scary, kidnapping, cannibalistic folks only live out in the boonies, The People Under the Stairs brought it closer to home and saying that these people could live right next door to you or in your neighborhood. This movie also partners well with a not-so-secret favorite of mine, Brian Yuzna's Society from 1989. Justin, I know I showed this movie to you. Both movies came out of the same conservative, like, late 80s, early 90s political era, and are total metaphors for the wealthy profiting from sucking all they can from the poor. While Society ends on a much bleaker note than The People Under the Stairs, the latter comes to a conclusion with Fool and Alice taking down these murderous, kidnapping, child-abusing landlords, and the neighborhood profits from their demise. It's a really satisfying ending for sure. There's blood, some gore, but the grossness is tolerable. Like I said earlier, Craven really isn't ever in the mood for needless violence or gore. There's also a very substantial supporting role by a younger Ving Rhames before he was super well known, and I've always really liked that dude. And I also feel it necessary to say that there's one dog death. I'm sensitive to this matter with animals. One dog death. You know, I missed a lot of the meaning when I was watching this movie as a youngster, and even thought some of the humor was kind of a byproduct. But really, Wes Craven is and always will be such a master, and everything that he really does in all of his movies is so intentional. I never saw the social commentary aspect of this movie because I've really never seen it in its entirety since high school. But now, upon rewatching it, it makes me really like this movie a lot more. The humor of this movie also makes the disturbing sequences with McGill and Roby easier to stomach how absolutely nuts they are. While you are totally rooting for Fool and Alice to defeat these landlords, and you also really want the people under the stairs to exact their revenge. Now, Justin, I know you've seen this movie. Do you have any thoughts on the people under the stairs?
I do. I haven't seen it. I haven't seen this movie in probably I would say a good 5 years. I think it's there's political commentary, which I always like. If you can work it into an entertaining horror film, why not do that? Then do the after school special.
Yeah. And I feel like it's the obviousness or like something that's like beating you over the face with it that like gets an Oscar nod.
Yeah.
Where it's like actually like this more subversive, like getting into kind of like your psyche and making you think about things like is actually the more constructive way.
Yeah.
In order to also like put out your art and also, you know, put out a message too.
Yeah. And I think too, this was now like, not that there was like gentrification in people on the stairs, but I think that there was that inkling of, you know, you're in a lower minority driven neighborhood, and like
it's like Section 8 housing is like what they're talking about.
Yeah, and I think that, and there was a couple of like Candyman was another movie
Candyman, exactly,
sort of fit into that social commentary genre, and I think it's a very smart and inventive way to, you can have social commentary but also place it within this entertaining genre, horror genre, action packed. Maybe kids won't get it, but you know, someone older will pull that from the movie, and I think that's great. So again, Serpent and the Rainbow and The People Under the Stairs are picks of the week. Both again mid-career Wes Craven movies. And I think each movie showed a lot of growth for Wes Craven. Yeah. I think as a writer and as a director. So now we're going to our we're going off format here.
Off book here, guys.
Off book here. And since this is our bonus, in quotes, big quotes episode, and we're doing Nightmare on Elm Street, we thought it'd be fun to share with you. We each have a nightmare that I wanted to each share a nightmare that we had that stuck with us that we can still remember to this day.
Yeah.
That's a strong nightmare.
Yeah, totally.
You know, if you have it when you're younger and you remember it like 10, 15 years later. So do you want to kick this one off, Lindsay? What is...
Yeah,
this
sure.
This is a nightmare. Can you tell me at what age you had this nightmare?
Yeah.
And then tell me what...
I feel like the nightmares that I remember were around the age of like 12, 13, 14. This one definitely falls into that realm. We're only telling one, but I did have one time where I was like involved in the Wes Craven Scream House, but you know, maybe that's for another podcast. This one's way more terrifying to me.
Please share.
So I always slept with my bedroom door open. My bed,
first off, when did you said this was 12, 13?
12, 13, okay, 14. Okay. So it was like, when was I born? 82. So like, I don't know, like 94, 95, 96, somewhere around there.
All right.
I like I said, I always slept with my bedroom door open and my bed faced the doorway because I was afraid of the dark and I didn't like total silence. This is still true today. I woke up because I heard super heavy breathing, and I remember having the conscious, like very awake thought, okay, my dad's having trouble breathing because of his asthma. And this was something that regularly happened, so I rolled over in bed to get up to check on my dad. No big deal, something that happened all the time. As soon as I could see the door, I was halfway turned over in my bed. There was like what appeared to be this 4-foot tall being shaped like a small Christmas tree. I can't think of a better shape to describe it as, but think of like what the silhouette of a small fir tree would be, but with more defined, descending, spiky offshoots coming off from the sides. The light from the hallway was lit it up from behind, so I could see the silhouette, but I couldn't see like marked definitions in like the face of whatever this was. And to boot, the only thing that I could see, it was that it had glowing red eyes. So there was no question that whatever I was looking at was not some like type of living creature in my doorway. As soon as I saw it, of course, I was paralyzed. I felt like it must have seen me move. Like, had it seen my eyes seeing it? So I like ever so slowly rolled back over to my side, so slowly. Maybe it wouldn't have seen me move because it was so dark in the room. I don't know. But I didn't want to keep looking at it. I just wanted it to go away. And at this point, I wasn't looking at it anymore. But I could still hear the breathing. Now I was just thinking, was it that thing's breathing that I was hearing, or did it do something to my dad? I had no idea, but my eyes were wide open under the sheets of my bed, and I had this overwhelming feeling that if I looked up from the covers, the face of that creature was going to be right there, inches away from my face, smiling or snarling, I don't know, just staring at me. Now I had this like incredible panic that set in, and I just kept thinking it was hovering over me, looking at me, and my paranoia had been completely incapacitating at this point. And this went on for maybe like 5 minutes, but it felt like a complete eternity. Finally, I couldn't handle it anymore. I couldn't believe it was real, even though I was terrified that it was. The heavy breathing had been intensified during this whole time that I was hiding under my covers. And I don't know, it was just too intense that I couldn't take it anymore. So I slowly started to roll back the way I had initially when I had seen the creature, and I pulled down the sheets from my eyes so slowly, and my heart was pounding. Was this thing going to see my face right then and there? And just like that, the creature disappeared and the breathing stopped. Like right then, the breathing stopped. I didn't see it anymore. I jumped out of my bed and I ran out of my room and flipped on the bedroom light. Nothing in the hallway either. I checked my parents' room that was just adjacent from mine. Their breathing was normal. Everything was fine. I stood around in the hallway for a few minutes just thinking, I was awake, right? I did see something. I know I did, for sure. Like, I was awake this whole time, right? And to this day, like, I don't know if I was dreaming or awake or in some state in between. And I've done some research, like, recently, actually, and learned that other people have seen similar things. Like, these shadowy figures are generally called appropriately shadow people. Most encounters happen when people are awake or half awake. Some have reported even the glowing red eyes, but I haven't found anyone who's seen the same Christmas tree, like fir tree type figure though. From what I've read, most shadow people that have seen are human shaped. As for my feeling of being awake and terrified, this totally sounds like sleep paralysis. But no matter how much I try to, scully this nightmare into a rational scientific explanation, there's still a part of me that's like, I don't know if that was real or not, which is really still terrifying to me, like over 20 years later. So it's hard to know, what it means, what it all means. But like to me, like right now, if you were to ask me, I don't know. That actually happened because it does not feel like a dream. Like, I know what a dream is.
Yeah.
That did not feel like a dream.
So this is kind of creepy. I'm being 100% serious to you listeners. You did not tell me what this dream was.
No.
This is the first time I'm hearing of
we
this
don't know what
dream.
our dreams are.
We didn't discuss. We just said we were going to do dreams.
Oh my God. What are you going to tell me right now?
Is so creepily similar to
really
my dream. I'm not. This isn't.
Oh my God! I'm gonna get freaked out right now.
So it's interesting that you say shadowy figure. So
yeah,
this is when I was probably 8 years old. I guess I was in like 3rd grade.
Okay.
Single. My mom was single parent.
Yeah.
We lived in the city and not a great neighborhood, so I just always stayed inside when she worked. And so she was always stressed. It was like kind of a stressful time, I guess. So, you know, I mean, when stress is around, you have weird dreams. But I had my own room, and it was an old city apartment in St. Louis. And before this dream happened, there were already things that happened in the place. Like, things would go missing. My mom was always frustrated. Like, it seemed like what you would consider to be like, oh, like, and St. Louis is known for having a lot of hauntings.
Yeah,
you know, it's
that's
known
for
like a haunted city. Well, anyway, I have this dream, and again, how you described, it's like, to this day, I'm like, was I awake? Was I sleeping? It seems so real. I can't distinguish, but my mom had found like some at a Goodwill or something, like an old school desk that you would seen in the 50s, the real heavy ones that were metal and had like a flat top that you could lift off to put pencils and stuff in. So that was in the center of my room, and that's where I would do my homework and stuff. Well, I have this dream that I wake up and the light's kind of coming in kind of bright through the window of my bedroom, like a bright street light, and my closet door opens and this like shadowy figure comes out.
Are you sitting in the desk?
I'm laying in my bed.
Okay.
But the shadowy figure comes out and sets something down on the desk, and I can't quite make out what it is. But at this point, I'm scared, so I'm like pushed all the way up against my wall. I'm like pulling my covers. I'm just like watching this figure, and then I start realizing that this light is coming from this item that's been placed on my desk, and what it is it's a film projector. And above me on my wall, a little tiny screen starts projecting, and it's me as a child and all the things that I had done from the time I can remember, from 4 years old to 8 years old. Anything that I had done that was like, would be even like remotely despicable, or like little secrets I tried to hide, like cheating on a test, or like lying to my mom about something, or like, you know, stepping on some neighbor's flower, was like projecting over my bed onto this wall. And at the very end of this film, there was just me standing near this tree, and the shadowy figure was in the film and came up behind me and started to grab me. And at that same time, I felt like something on my neck, like in like what I consider to be my real life. And I pushed myself, and I was pushing myself so hard against my wall that like it felt like my back, I was hurting my back. And then I woke up, and I was just terrified. I was like sweating, and my desk was there. My closet door was closed, but I was so scared. Like if I was an adult now, I'd get up and like check the whole house. But I was so petrified that I just laid there, and I laid there till the sun came up. And for like, it like stayed with me for days, like weeks. I mean, I still think about it now.
Wow.
Very creepy.
There's like so many things to unpack in that.
Yeah.
Like one, the like humiliation thing of like these things that you've done as a child, like being exposed to you, and then like in some way like being punished for it or being called out for it.
Yeah. And I did grow up in a very my grandfather was like very religious, very like God-fearing man. So like I kind of grew up around that environment. So maybe that was part of it. Because I was going to a Christian school at the time. They told me I was going to hell for listening to Huey Lewis, who was my favorite artist at the time. And so, I was like, if I came home, I was like, Mom, like, I'm going to go to hell. And she's like, why? I was like, because they said Huey Lewis sings the devil's music. Because he had a song called I Want a New Drug. I Want a New Drug.
I'm going to laugh.
And I also
much more later about you going to hell for listening to Huey Lewis.
Yeah,
but
and
it's
Michael
cool.
Jackson's Thriller was like my favorite record, and my grandfather was just like, Michael Jackson sings the devil's music. Like those were his words. Like he sings the devil's music. So I was already
basically
I was already on the
age.
highway to hell at that point, but this dream, maybe it was like, it was.
Wow.
It was showing
I mean, that would make so much sense. Like these tiny things that, like, I mean, we know is like if you were to look at objective, like not, influenced by religion or society or like whatever, we look at these things and go, you liking Huey Lewis or Michael Jackson really does not mean that you're going to a hell dimension of any kind. But growing up around that, of course, like anything, you stepping on a flower or you pushing a kid or like whatever it may be is going to make you have this extreme guilt. And so of course it's going to manifest. But what is this shadowy figure, man?
And it's creepy.
What is that?
Several people have had this like shadowy figure.
Dude, shadow people are a thing. I found out. It creeped me out to read about it.
I don't like to read about it. So.
Yeah, it bothered me to read about it. And I was like somewhat kind of happy like no one had seen like the exact, or at least I haven't found that. But I mean,
if I have to be honest, I'm fine us just not talking about shadow people.
We can never talk about it ever again.
I still have to go to sleep tonight. I got to work in the morning. So enough about our nightmares, unless it happens in your Murray moment. But I don't know. I don't know what you're gonna do.
No, I couldn't find a nightmare Murray moment.
Okay. Well, either way, here's your Murray moment.
Chicks dig me because I rarely wear underwear, and when I do, it's usually something unusual.
I think I need a root canal. I'm sure I need a long, slow root canal.
You gonna come and shake my monkey tree again?
Oh, what does that old queen know? She didn't even show.
Hey, this is so scrumptious. Is this hand shucked?
The flowing robes, the grace, all striking.
That was fun.
All right, so not a nightmare, but in 1980, Billy did do this little-known film that I love. I don't consider a nightmare of his career at all, but this little-known film called Where the Buffalo Roam, wherein he played real-life gonzo journalist Hunter S. Thompson. The film is still largely unknown, but still touted as a fairly accurate representation of Thompson, due in large part to Billy spending a lot of time with him during the making of the film. And Thompson, who served as executive consultant on the film, felt like Billy should come as close to becoming him as possible for the role. I mean, why not? If you're playing him, why not be as close to him as possible, right? Well, this involved many weeks of late nights, drugs, not sleeping, general shenanigans that the common person dare not even try. Not known to be a method actor, that being one who becomes the character, Billy dove headfirst into this role. And legend has it, the two, that being Billy and Thompson, had a string of one-upping each other, like with wacky, unsafe antics. One well-rumored incident was Thompson actually tying Billy up to a chair and throwing him into a pool. And as the story goes, Billy would have drowned if it hadn't been for Thompson, who reluctantly dragged him out of the pool. And if you've seen Where the Buffalo Roam or know much about Thompson's life, this story is completely believable. So years later, Billy would telephone Nightmare on Elm Street baby all grown up Johnny Depp when he was making Fear and Loathing in Las Vegas, another film about Thompson, and he gave Depp a warning for the future. Billy told him that his next role should be something as far away from Thompson as possible, that Thompson really gets inside of you, that you could become obsessed, kind of like Billy did, and if you weren't careful, you'd be playing him again years later. And a little over 13 years later, Depp would assume the Thompson role again in the movie The Rum Diary. Murray has said that when he entered the 5th season of Saturday Night Live, he was still in the character of Thompson, that he just couldn't quit him. He said about that time in his life, "I took on another persona, and I still have Thompson in me, kind of like wanting to get out." That says a lot, I would think. I mean, you know, you hanging out with Hunter S. Thompson and he affects you that much. It says a lot. And maybe there's a lot of Thompson left in all of those that came across him during the time that he was alive. After his abrupt suicide in February 2005, Depp reportedly spent $3 million to make Thompson's last wish, how he had chosen to be put to rest, actually come to fruition. That being Thompson's ashes being shot from a cannon, placed atop a 153-foot tower in the shape of a double-thumbed fist clutching a peyote button. This was a design that Thompson had dreamt up many years before. Of the almost 300 folks in attendance to a send-off, you better believe that our Billy was there too. These were wild times, and I don't think you or I, Justin, could ever fully understand how deep Billy or Johnny Depp went into understanding the role of Thompson or befriending him. But man, I'd take the worst hangover in the world or near-death experience to have found out.
Yeah, so I watched Where the Buffalo Roam recently, and and not too long ago that I watched Fear and Loathing, and I think Fear and Loathing in Las Vegas is the better film, but I find Bill Murray's portrayal of Hunter S. Thompson more enjoyable.
Yeah, I would agree with you.
But maybe just because Johnny Depp is he's continuously done that sort of zany character in that same sort of style and voice.
I think there's a lot more, it's more action-y or something like that in Fear and Loathing, but Bill Murray, to me, I don't even think it's just because I like the man, his portrayal is better. Well,
I think too, in Fear and Loathing, the narration really lends to the movie's coherency, whereas like Where the Buffalo Roam, you're not getting anything but Bill Murray talking to himself for any sort of narrative drive.
Yeah.
Well, we ran pretty long this time, but hope you've enjoyed everything. Nightmare on Elm Street, our own personal nightmares, the pick of the week, and our Murray moments. So we're continuing on. We've got one more scary movie for the month of October, and this is one of our favorites.
It is.
Tom Holland's 1985 Fright Night.
Man, I never get sick of Fright Night.
I don't.
So much fun.
I don't. So Halloween Eve, you can tune in. We'll be doing Fright Night, and that'll be our last scary movie. And then we're moving into some pretty serious, semi-serious waters. What are we doing in November? What we got coming up after Fright Night? Kids?
Is Kids coming up?
I think Kids is what we're doing.
Man, I can't wait for that one to happen.
I've mentioned to a few people that we're doing Kids, and I got sort of like quiet side eye.
Oh, really?
Yeah.
I remember that movie. I tried to forget that movie.
Ruin your podcast with Kids. Things were going great. I'm sure it'll be a provocative podcast episode. So we've got that coming up. Thank you. Yeah.
Major tonal shift.
Yeah, tonal shift. Normally I hate it, but well, thanks so much again for listening. You can always find us on social media, Facebook, Don't Push Pause Podcast, on Instagram at Don't Push Pause Podcast. You can check us on our website, don'tpushpausepodcast.com, or you can always email us directly at don'tpushpausepodcast@gmail.com. We always look forward to hearing from people. Feel free to rate us if you like on iTunes. That always helps us out, helps spread the word, and show our relevance. So
we always share us with your friends. Talk about it. Talk to us about it. We love hearing from you, and we love getting the word out about the podcast.
And I didn't mention this earlier, but Serial Mom was our one of our biggest downloaded episodes that we've done so far.
It's pretty cool.
Thank you, all you John Waters fans that came out of the woodwork to download that episode. Like, we saw our numbers jump and we're like, whoa,
Serial Mom,
that's crazy.
Who
it was
knew?
Like double the downloads that we normally get for a first week of an episode. So thank you so much for that.
It's really cool.
Well, until next time, I'm Justin Johnson.
And I'm Lindsay Reber.
Thank you.
Thank you.